So we're here today with Scott Prime. You're the pastor here at New Hope Wesleyan. And Scott, thank you very much for being part of this today. Really appreciate it. And can you tell us, how long have you been the pastor here?
I've been in the Valley, in Kentville area for 22 years. I came in 1994.
Right.
So I'm in my 22nd year. It was a church plant. It had been operating for about 3 years before I got here.
Okay.
People were highly discouraged. They didn't know if they wanted to continue or not. And we just felt that this was where God wanted us to be. And he planted our feet here, and the rest is kind of history. We built a building, launched a new satellite in Kingston recently. So God has been at work, and we've gone from a handful to several hundred, so we're quite thankful for that.
Well, we're all very excited. I know, living in Kentville myself, we've been praying, hoping, wishing, looking for great things, and we're grateful for the way the Lord's been using you and your congregation. We're in these days of COVID, and we don't know how long we're going to be, but we know for church, it's really had a lot of ramifications for us. And I'm thinking, in terms of talking to you today, and we've been wanting to talk to some pastors about what it's been like for your congregation. What's it like for you as a leader? And I guess maybe I'll just jump into it and ask you, what's it been like for you in broad terms, maybe, before we get down to some of the specifics? But
it has been the most difficult season of my pastoral life or ministry life. I've never had a season quite like this season that we're in. Things are constantly changing. Expectations are high, restrictions are high, and you're just always changing and trying to just adapt to what's happening. You almost feel like you're reactive rather than proactive. And I have often said that I wish they had taught a course in Bible college on how to pastor through a pandemic, but they didn't offer that. So you have you have no resource to go to and go, what do you do in this situation? You just kind of learn, as the terminology in the church world, baptism by fire. You just kind of learn as you go along. So it's been difficult.
Do you think in the early days, back there in March, early April, as we were all coming to terms with this, you mentioned the term reactive. What were some of those early things that you had to react to, or what was happening in terms of the congregation?
Well, of course, when the province brought down the mandate that no more than 10 people could gather together, we knew we were in trouble. Like a lot of churches were in trouble at that time. We were live streaming our services at that point, so it was just a quick transition from live stream to pre-recorded and then push it out as live stream. But even that had some rough waters that we had to navigate because we'd never done that before. So that was tough. Then just to kind of collectively keep everybody connected. We did Facebook things. We did devotional thoughts every week or every day that we put out for just to help people feel like there is hope in this and we will get through this. Even though the belief was this is only going to be for a few weeks, it's dragged on longer than that, more than anyone ever imagined, I think, realistically.
One of the things I observed, I don't know, it sounds like you had the same thing happen, is that there was it's an old phrase, but it was almost a circling of the wagons, in the sense of, you talk about congregational connectivity or making sure everybody's okay. That was also part of one of your first strategies, I'm sure.
It was, yes. Yeah, we actually, the staff, we just divvied up the directory that we had. And every week for the first 4 weeks, we just called everybody, said, do you need anything? Because at that time they were saying, just stay home, don't go anywhere. Do you need somebody to pick up groceries for you? The elderly, do you need somebody to pick up your prescription at the drugstore? So we just went old school, old fashioned, and we just went call everybody and see how they're doing. And most people responded, we're doing okay, thanks, and we just reassured them that we're praying for them. So that carried us for the first month or so, until some of the restrictions kind of lifted and you're able to get around a little bit more.
That's part of what I've seen, and I think that was very much appreciated, because there were some people who felt, it's as odd as it is, they felt more connected in those early weeks maybe than they had felt. For whatever reason.
The toughest part was you couldn't go to the hospital.
Right.
And there were multiple people at New Hope that were dying and requesting their pastor to come in and pray with them and give them words of comfort, and you just couldn't do it. And
So what did you do when that was happening?
we reassured the healthy family members that we were praying for them.
Yeah.
And look, I've pleaded and begged to go in,
Right.
but it's just not possible.
No.
So.
I was speaking with a chaplain at a hospital, and she was really pained deeply about those same things that were happening. And they did do some things like FaceTime, and they tried to hold the phone
It's a great
next to
idea.
somebody. Those are good ideas, but still, in some cases, people are unresponsive. But they just, the
Right.
presence, it's really tough.
That's right.
Yeah. I think pastoral presence in a hospital too is not only encouragement for the family, but for nursing staff and others too.
That's it.
We
Yeah.
forget that sometimes,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
but that is a huge challenge, would have been.
Yeah.
What's it like these days?
It's still highly restrictive.
Right, right,
On a good day, you can get in. On a bad day, you
Right,
can't.
maybe
Whatever
not.
the hospital determines. So
Right.
it's still an ongoing struggle.
right. Well, that certainly would be one of your bigger challenges.
It was.
Were there other things, or are there other things that come to mind when you think of some of the major challenges during that time?
And just trying to keep everybody connected
Yeah.
digitally.
Yeah.
That's the best that we could do.
Right.
The phone calls, that's
Sure,
an audible
sure.
phone call, but
Yeah.
to actually visit. We did drive-through prayer for
Yeah.
a month. So
Oh, what's
one
that?
night,
Tell me about that.
one night a week, we would set up in the parking lot and say
wow.
drive-through, and we'll pray for whatever needs that you may have.
Oh, my soul, that's great.
At a social distance, acceptable distance, and they'd roll down their window, and we'd have a yak, and then we'd pray
Oh,
for
wow.
them, and
That's
then
great.
they would drive off. So we
That's
did
great.
that in both Kentville and Kingston.
Right.
So that was well received. Just another way to stay connected.
Scott,
with the
that's a
people.
great idea.
Well,
that's something that people
we
are going to
just
pick up on.
the
That's
staff
great.
thought of it, and we did it. So.
I don't know how many churches would have done that. That's great. And I
In,
mean,
in fact, in our Kingston location, we had random people just drive in off the street because it's right on the main drag.
yeah,
And they just drove in the parking lot and said, "Could you pray for me?"
we talked about just briefly there about some of the blessings that come through a time like this, and we're still in it. I know we've returned to worship, and before we came on to record, you were talking about a percentage of your church that's back. But what would you say would be a couple of the major blessings that have come?
One of the most major blessings that we've had, I'm sure maybe I'm the only one, but I'm sure I'm not. The other leaders went, "God, what are you up to? Like, this just doesn't seem like it's of you.
Right.
How could you allow this?" You ask
Right.
all those questions.
Right.
And as we began to go through it, God began to stir our hearts, as me as a leader, then our staff. And we adopted Hope Huddles, is what we're calling
Okay.
them. We had community groups before, but we put a fork in them, and we said, they're done. And we started Hope Huddles based on Acts 2.
Right.
So they're coming together for fellowship, for connection, for food, for the word, for prayer. And we're just believing that signs and wonders will come out of that.
All right.
We have about 160 of our people in Hope Huddles right
How
now.
big are the huddles?
No more than 10.
Okay.
Some have 12, but we tried to respect the bubble thing. And once they start, they add no new people to them
Okay.
for the season. So the fall is the season for
How
us.
did you train your leaders?
We just, we worked all summer long on putting a manual together and some questions and answers and some problems that you'll face.
Wow.
We picked 14 of our best leaders that we felt we had in the church and said, "You're empowered to teach the people.
Wow.
We'll give you some information on what to teach, but it's yours. You do with it as you see." And we gave them a mentor. So there's a mentor that's alongside of them, helping
Good.
them throughout the process. So it's just been fabulous. We've never had that many people in small groups before.
But it also speaks to the need for connectivity.
Exactly.
I mean, people have that need
Exactly.
for sure.
Yeah, that's the thing that people spoke the most of what they missed
Yeah.
pre-COVID was, I can't see everybody.
Right,
Like there are
exactly.
people that I get to see every week at church. I don't
Right.
see them anymore. This gives them the opportunity to gather together in a small group. And I think, believe it or not, I think small groups are the wave of the future because of COVID. It may change after COVID, but right now, it seems to be this is the way to keep everybody kind of connected.
Wow, I love it.
That's the biggest blessing that we've had. So through it, we're asking God, why? And then God goes, here. And
Wow.
it explodes. It just takes off on us.
So in terms of the old word would be curriculum, but in terms of the Bible teaching, are you all on kind of the same page?
We
or what
are
do you do?
for this season, the fall season, so
Okay.
it's based on the sermon. So
Yeah.
I send off some extra stuff that we couldn't cover on a Sunday morning, and they take it and teach their whole huddle. In January, we'll enter another season, and we're going to actually pick a Bible chapters, and they will just go chapter by chapter through
Great.
a book of the
So
Bible.
you're preaching on Sunday on a particular passage, obviously, then
They're talking about
expanding
it.
on that. So many of them would have been involved either in person or
online. Yeah.
And then, oh wow, that's great.
Yeah.
That's
So it
great.
just helped us bring everybody's on the same page for the first season. Then the next session or season, then we'll pick a book of the Bible,
Yeah.
an easy one, maybe James or
Yeah,
Gospel,
yeah,
and they'll go chapter by chapter.
Great.
And then that onus is on the leader to prepare for that.
Great,
So
great.
we may not necessarily be doing that on a Sunday, but they will be diving into it on a
Right.
weekly basis. So.
And I know that there may be people who are going to be listening to this who are going to say, I'd like to contact that guy and hear more about that, because that's
Yeah, would love to share
great idea.
information.
Great, great.
Of course, we borrowed some stuff from other churches too
That's how
with
it
their
works.
permission, so
That's
I'd
how it
love
works.
to lend it to whoever would like
Absolutely.
it.
And that's part of what we're up to in all of this, is trying to empower and
Right.
encourage one another. That's very exciting.
So the overall health of the church, we feel because of this, because of COVID, we're going to be healthier than we were before
Yeah.
COVID. So.
Yeah, yeah. Now, you mentioned, you're a good Wesleyan, I'm a good Baptist. There's been a bit of leveling that's taken place in a lot of our denominations. You use the words, you're hoping for signs and wonders, Scott.
Yeah.
You use that. Tell me what you're thinking. What are you thinking?
Miracles.
Okay.
Great things.
All right.
Transformation of lives.
Great.
People
Great.
who are
Wonderful.
chained with sin are freed. The sick are healed.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, if we don't live in expectation of that,
Right.
We are status quo and then we just sink.
Yeah.
But when we live with that fervent expectation, I think that's the kind of soil that works.
Yeah.
The Holy Spirit works in that. Is great.
Yeah. The way I read Acts 2 is that the church got together
Yep.
daily, actually, not weekly, but daily.
Yep.
And out of that spiritual atmosphere, great things started to happen. So.
And I love it when it talks there in Acts 2 about the quality of their fellowship and all that was going on. Then it says, and the Lord added to their number daily too. That's just this ongoing natural byproduct of
It is.
that kind of love and care and support.
And we're hoping
presence.
that component will be added once COVID's done.
Yeah.
Right now, it's more,
Yeah.
here's our group, don't add to it, because
Right.
we want that group to feel safe,
Absolutely.
that they show up every week, that
Yeah.
there's not going to be somebody they
Right.
don't know
Right.
show up. So
Right.
that group is kind of like a family
Yeah.
huddle
Yeah.
for the season.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
So let me ask you in terms of either what or who, and I know obviously the Lord and the power of His Holy Spirit that gives us the greatest strength as a pastoral leader, as a ministry leader. But in addition to that, to Him, what stands out, or who stands out in your mind as someone who's either encouraged you, blessed you, to be healthy and to stay strong during this time yourself?
It's not a cliche, but my wife.
Okay.
She's number one. She's my biggest cheerleader whenever I think I bombed or done something that I shouldn't have done or said. She's always there to give me rational advice and to encourage me. So she would be my number one cheerleader.
Great.
That cheers me on. The staff are very, very good. We've kind of worked together, though we've all kind of struggled with COVID in our own way, but we've all been there to support each other. And then I have a few mentors that I meet with on a monthly basis that we're able to kind of speak into each other's lives and help.
Great.
So
Without-
being real is the big deal.
Yeah, being real is the big
in
deal.
this COVID, you can't have a facade.
No.
You have to tell people,
Yeah.
those you trust, how you're really feeling in order to get through it.
Yeah. Did you have mentors prior to this
I
COVID?
did, yes. But it wasn't as intense as it seems to be during COVID. I firmly believe we as a church are going to be dealing with COVID emotionally and spiritually for years to come.
Yeah.
Like
Very well.
the mental health of people is extremely poor right now.
Say a little bit more about that. What are you observing?
They're just struggling with isolation. So those who are extroverts,
Yeah.
they're wheeling from being locked up in isolation,
Yeah.
and the introverts are going, I really like this, which is not healthy either.
Right.
So then there's a mental component that affects them as well.
Yeah.
And then just the whole restriction idea. There are some people who, are anti-government, and then there's those who are pro-government, and it's just everybody seems to be on edge.
Yeah.
And it's just to kind of go, Jesus is king. Let's trust him. It's going to be okay. Let's walk together in this.
Right. You would have your indicators. I would have my indicators in terms of monitoring maybe how I'm doing.
Yep.
So one of those for me would be, am I sleeping well? Do I have a desire to get out and get a little exercise? How am I doing with my monitor of patience? Am I anxious? Am I overly concerned? I'm not projecting any of that on you. I'm letting you know those are some things I have to kind of,
That's fair.
really look at myself and say, how am I doing? Are you checking in on yourself, like your mentors? I'm not asking you to be specific, but are you kind of looking at that whole picture of everything?
Yes, I am. In August, on the front end of COVID, there was so much energy spent that I didn't realize just how depleted I was.
Okay.
And so in August, I took some extra time.
Good.
I'm just away from church to
Good.
just kind
Good.
of, read, walk the beach,
Great.
ride the bike,
Good.
do things that just kind of put you back in a good place. Because in August, it kind of, here's my alarm system. When you kind of lose the passion of, God, what am I going to say on Sunday? I'm digging and searching and nothing is happening or coming. I go, okay, the well is kind of dry.
Yeah.
It's time to kind of replenish things. That would be mine. I've never really had trouble sleeping. I've always slept well, but it would be the desire for Sunday morning.
Yeah.
It seemed to become more of a chore than it did to be a privilege.
Right.
And that spark came back, with some time off. And,
Right.
And
I'm listening well, because there can be a temptation among leaders when we're in a crisis or we're coming through a heavy time, is just keep at it, stay at it. The needs are so many. There are people, as a pastor, we look at, the needs, but you were wise to take some extra time. Yeah.
I strategically did it. I knew on the front end, being a leader, you have to lead the charge. You just have to. If people are going to be confident and feel like you're going to weather this, you have to lead the charge. But as soon as the front end was done, then I went, and now's my time. I need to take some time for myself.
No, that's good. So, do you have any wisdom? I mean, you were offering it, but what would you say to your fellow pastoral leaders during this time? Because obviously, at the time as we're filming it right now, we are recognizing in the west of Canada, Quebec, Ontario, largest number of cases yesterday. We don't know how long this bubble in the Maritimes is going to last. We had hoped we wouldn't face a second wave so quickly. What are you wanting to say to encourage other pastoral leaders, particularly about their own health in terms of taking good care of themselves?
Watch yourself. Have somebody that can speak into your life. Have a mentor that can be real to you, and you be real to that person as well. That was key for me. I think that's key for anybody. Nobody can do ministry as an island.
No.
You can't do it in isolation either. We're learning that through COVID. So we need support system. We need people. God, the Word, meditation, taking time for spiritual life is important. But having people who can speak into us sometimes is more beneficial than reading a passage of Scripture.
Exactly right.
Because they just kind of nail it, and you go, yeah, I didn't see that. I've been trying to avoid that, or.
Right.
And they bring it up to the surface, so you're forced to deal with it.
Right.
So that's what I encourage any pastor to do. I would also say don't waste today on worrying about tomorrow, because who knows what will happen. COVID's proved that every day it changed.
Exactly.
Take the opportunity you have today and run with it. Find ways to expand the kingdom. There are ways.
Right.
I didn't think there were ways, and boom, Hope Huddles happened. So
That's great.
So there are ways to expand the kingdom.
Very exciting. I think you said early on you didn't realize how intense this was going to be, or how exhausting, really. You didn't use that term, but it really, it's just, it took everything. It's taking everything, because you find yourself having to encourage other people. You're trying to do all that, and to make sure you're open, you're being transparent, you're vulnerable with a mentor. And I think I heard you say earlier, I just want to underline it, that you also were much more intentional, it sounds like, during this time to seek out that mentor or mentors.
Yes, absolutely.
No,
it's
good.
critical. You can't do it alone. And you said a word, patience. That's, the longer this goes, the longer COVID goes. And I admitted this to my staff yesterday in our staff meeting, was my patience is getting thinner and thinner. Like, there are people at New Hope that surprise me, that I thought they would really struggle, and they've really excelled.
Right.
And then there are other people I thought they're just going to get through this with flying colors. They're going to excel, and they have just, been all over the map. And so I get frustrated at that. Like, you know better, and you should do better. And so my patience becomes less and less. And so that's a check for me, that I need to be more patient. Because when I'm not so patient, then I'm not so compassionate. And when I'm not so compassionate, then I'm not observing your needs and how Jesus might be able to help you. So it's just kind of a spiral downward. So
I really appreciate that. I think you've answered, this is one of my last questions, actually. It was, how are you personally tending to your own spiritual needs at this time? So, I mean, I don't like always to segregate and cut up the pie and say, this is spiritual, that's physical, this is mental, this is social. But there is a sense in which part of our life as a pastoral leader is to tend to our spiritual life. What's that been like for you? Probably the same as what it had been, I'm sure, but has that been any different?
One of the benefits of COVID is because you had more time in isolation.
It's true.
Certainly on the front end of the first 8 weeks or whatever, so you could read more. And
I found the same.
I read more scripture. I read more books. So that was a benefit that helped me spiritually to read the Word more, and gave more time for prayer. There was less interruptions, versus pre-COVID. So that's been helpful as well. And again, just to highlight, having a mentor that can speak to you has been gold. It's just has been gold.
Excellent, excellent. One last thing, and then I'll wrap this up. And that is, we were talking earlier about the negotiation of expectations. You mentioned the government, congregation. How has your own church leadership, would you say, responded there in terms of just the negotiations of expectations? Because they sometimes hear from our people more than we hear from our people, but how have you managed to work through reopening? And we don't know, will we have to close again, or what will it be like? But was that a big issue for you?
It was. We just wanted to be legitimate. We didn't want to be off on our own, doing our own thing. We wanted to meet the guidelines that the province had set out. Of course, you have some in your congregation are going, throw that out the window. Let's just all get together and sing Kumbaya, and things will be good. And then you have those who are extremely cautious that the restrictions are not enough. It is tough navigating that. We found that there's a third. So one third was clamoring, as soon as you open the doors, we're back. Oddly enough, only a few of that third came back. The other third was, I'll come back, but I'm going to take some time. I want to make sure things are safe, that you're doing it properly. And the other third is, you won't see me, Pastor. I'm sorry, but you won't see me until this is done. There's a vaccination, COVID's over with. And that's pretty true. Right now, we're running about 2/3 of attendance, and there's a third that view us online, and they're playing it safe, and we're compassionate towards that. And understand that people have their own fear levels, and we're willing to deal with that. So I forget the original question.
That's fine. No, I was asking just about your leaders, and you've answered that in terms of just
they've been very supportive. I've had nobody that was rogue saying on my leadership team saying, let's not do this or let's not do that. We've all been very conscious of the fact, let's do this right and proper.
That's good.
So.
I appreciate this very much. And this morning in another meeting, I heard, this was in the context of the university and teaching, faculty that are having to change everything and the way that they teach at the college, the Divinity College, already like your church, we're already online and all that, but it's the the state of people's mental health, I think, in terms of the longer this goes, and we're at a point where we hoped it was going to be going in the other direction, and now we see another mountain coming. And it's going to take a lot of prayer and grace and wisdom to know how to navigate all this. And to help people to realize this could take a bit of time yet.
It will.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much
You're
for
welcome.
this. I
Thank
appreciate it. And God bless you and your leadership
Thank you.
here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And we'll make sure that if people are interested, that they can get in touch with you. We'll give some good contact info.
Sure thing.
So
Be honored to.
thank you so much, Scott.
Great.
God bless.
Thank you.